models and all that in the UK. And after several years of working in finance, I moved to IT. So that's where I'm coming from. So, okay, now basically, I'd like to talk about something that after I moved from finance to IT, something that struck me for quite a long time. And that's the fact that to be a successful IT person, in the 70s when I moved to IT in those days, you could be a really good programmer and just do programming. And you sit in the corner and, in front of your green monitor, and you can be recognized as a good programmer. You don't have to talk to many people, until you become a systems analyst. But in today's world, the days where you can be a pure programmer / developer, there isn't that many scenarios like that. A lot of the time you find that as a technical person, you really need to have to deal with people. And that's where I'm coming from. I would not be having slides with the word IT in it. Not many of them will, because I'm trying to get across that in governance, there really is a need for governance that is across the whole organization. So although conceptually we can talk about the difference between business governance and IT governance, at the end of it, it's a bit like ethics. Ethics is ethics. There's an interesting book I read which says basically that if you're ethical, you're ethical. Right? You can't say that you are not ethical except when you're in business. Right? You've got business ethics, or you've got IT ethics, but not other kind of ethics. It doesn't work that way. So basically the same thing with governance. And I'd like to try and show you some of the ideas that kind of bring this into play. This was, I was in the, did I say that? In the SSM, which is, regulates, registers all the companies. So this is a little poster I took a picture of yesterday. It struck me that what it says there is good corporate governance is about commitment to values and ethical business conduct. Nothing wrong in that, except that if you try and ask yourself, okay, what does that all mean? How do I do that? How do I practice good ethics? Do I follow a book? Values. What values are we talking about? Are there different values? Do different groups of people have different values, which are acceptable or not acceptable? So those are actually very, very good things to have in mind. But at the end of the day, we need to translate that into actionable items. How can we put into place mechanisms that, to a large extent, will assure us that there's a certain degree of governance? Okay, this is an article which came out in the SPA sometime back when I used to write my column. And I proposed that there were a couple of basic principles which could be implemented directly when we talk about governance, and that was addressed to the IT people in those days. There are few things that has to be there in the governance, all the major interests has to be represented. If we are going to make a major decision and we leave out a major player, a major stakeholder in the decision process, then it's bad governance, right? Because the end result is not going to be good, and the people who really should be keeping an eye on the project, are not doing so. Responsibility and authority must be in the same hands. Okay? How many of you are from IT background? Okay, thank you. So now, if you're from IT background, how many are from non-IT background? Okay, that's great. So I've worked in two camps, right? And we know that to today, I'm surprised, in the 70s it was there, and today, we're still in the same place. What's wrong with the users? I'm asking the IT people now, right? Users don't know what they want, right? And every time they tell me something and it's not what is it, by the time I develop the system, they say it's not that. Now, let me switch it around now, right? If I ask the same question to the users, what's wrong with the IT people? They don't know what we want, right? And they keep asking us, every time they come to a meeting and ask us to tell, they ask us to tell them more, excuse me, and we can't. So basically, one of the key problems is that the systems analyst, which is a rare title now, unless you're in the government, you're probably called an architect, some other gloriously sounding titles. Your problem is that when you want to talk to somebody who understands the business and the operations to tell you something, who do they send you? They send you the fresh graduate who just joined the department, right? Who doesn't know anything. Every time you ask a question, they say, oh, let me get back to my boss and I tell you. Okay? Now that's bad governance. So basically that's why we say that in any kind of operation, any kind of project, you need people who really have have the authority as well as a responsibility. It doesn't have to be at a very high level. It just happens that that person must have the authority to tell you what the department needs, rather than keep on going back to the bosses. As an example, yeah. And similarly with the IT people, right? Coming back from the user's viewpoint, the users will say, hey, every time we ask the IT guy, can this be done? Can that be done? I say, not sure. Let me go back and ask my boss. So it happens in both sides, yeah. So basically, I'll move on from there. And of course, avoiding a conflict of interest, in the sense that if you're acting on behalf of the customer, then you cannot also be acting on behalf of the supplier. Yeah? So these are straightforward things. The whole set of articles, well, most of it, I've already uploaded it to this particular thing. Yeah? So you can download all of them, at leisure. So this is basically the gist of what I'm trying to get at, in the sense that if you talk about governance, right? If you talk to the management or the IT manager or whatever, if you say, well, what's governance? Is this something to basically monitor me, to audit me, and to kind of give me a slap on the hand in case I do something wrong? That's not going to work very well, because people have all kinds of ways of hiding things, and etc. So at the end of the day, the business must be fully convinced that good governance leads to better business. The government department has to be convinced that practicing good governance will lead to a more efficient department, will lead to promotions, will lead to higher profiles, etc. Anybody know what's a little bubble? WITFM? What channel is that? No, actually it stands for what's in it for me. Okay. So at the end of the day, good governance also has to consider that particular question. What's in it for that person? It doesn't mean that you're got to give lots of money to the person, whatever. But there are issues regarding status, issues regarding remuneration, recognition, which has to be in place so that people will actually go and practice the good governance. Okay, this is any of you from Clangpot, please forgive me. It is not a criticism of Clangpot, but the last few days there's been this interesting thing that came out in the press. Yeah, and my question is this, because I really like to show you that, hey, what's IT systems got to do with governance? Yeah. And this is a small example whereby, presumably, now the first time this particular news thing came out, apparently they were having problems in the port because somebody had invested in a new system that was supposed to make things more efficient, and the opposite happened, right? So the cost tripled, whatever. So again, please understand, it is not a criticism of Clangpot, it happens everywhere. And I just want to use this as an example that you can have a project that's on time, on budget, everybody signs off, as usual, most people sign off blindly, isn't it? Bad governance again, right? But everybody signs off the project, and yet it has created a negative impact on the organization. So, now, the question is, new system came up, why was it not stopped before it started? Right? Because somebody should have understood that it's going to create all these kind of issues, given the way the project was defined. Yeah. So somebody should have, good governance says that in such a case, somebody should have stopped the project in the first place. Also, if the project has started, sometimes through no fault of the project manager, the IT department, or the users, situations change. Right? You remember the last couple of years, the petrol price situation? The petrol price zoomed up, so people started developing projects that make it viable to replace petrol with some other fuel, for example. And then suddenly what happened? Petrol price zoomed down, right? So that can't be helped. That life's like that. So in that situation, there should be, in terms of good governance, there should be some mechanism for somebody to monitor the projects, so that it's not just a question of how well on time, how well on budget the project is. Is the project still viable from the strategic directions that the company or the department is heading towards? Yeah. And of course, at the end of the day, is anybody responsible? Should anyone be responsible for the first two items? And the answer, of course, is yes. Yeah. So if you want to practice good governance, all these things have to be in place. Excuse me. Now, are these issues related to governance and security? You bet they are. Yeah? Because why? Why is it system failure, even though it seems to be a small system, has an impact on security? Excuse me. Now, in security, we know, even from the early days, that one of the most vulnerable times is when the system is down, right? And that's when people will attack the system. And there are people watching your system. You bring it down for a short while, they attack the system. So good governance says that people should, it's not just a matter of putting secure systems within your systems, it should make sure that the systems work the way they're supposed to. And now this is a graph that's well, the one that goes up is the bad one, the one that goes down is the good one. Okay? Now, in terms of your ability to scope a project, what happens is that on the horizontal axis, that's the timeline. Vertically, it shows the cost of the unpredicted cost. This is not a predictable cost. This is the unpredicted cost. So if your project, without putting in good governance, right, has been allowed to start for the wrong reasons, and for the wrong scoping of the functionality, you'll find that as the project progresses, there are more and more changes, right? Anybody run a project where there are no changes? Right? If anybody can claim that they've run projects where there's been no changes, it's always exactly the way they define it right up front, then you deserve a $1 million prize, because it never happened in my lifetime, to me anyway. So basically you find that in terms of governance, the people who actually scope the project is very, very critical, right? It is a very, very critical task. It is half science and half art, and if you don't have the governance mechanisms to make sure that the functionality is well scoped, that you've got at least 80%, as opposed to the average projects that I've seen, which is 20%, right? And the other 80% is hidden in terms of changes as the project goes along. Then you find that there's a big gap in terms of the kind of original budget, And what is the problem? Because once you have exhausted your budget and you ask for more money and the more money comes in and then there's no more money and you're only halfway done, what happens? You cut corners. When you cut corners, what happens? One of the first things that goes is all the security aspects, all the monitoring mechanisms. A lot of those you just throw away because you say, well, we don't have time, we don't have money, so let's just give the user what he wants, which is basically give him the screen that he thinks he wants, and with many of the things missing behind it. Okay, so that's that. Who takes responsibility again, right? And of course, I've got a cartoon that shows this is where the finger pointing starts. No, that's not wanted. No, that's what you wanted. No, that's not what I told you. I told you something else. No, what you told me was exactly what I'm giving you now. Okay, and so increasingly businesses are managing activities as projects. Okay? Now, project management, some people say it's no big deal. It's no big deal. It's another form of management. However, when we manage activities as projects, what happens is that we are very particular about starting time, ending time, right? Controlling various aspects because it's a one-shot thing, right? Unlike a daily operation, a project, you build a bridge is a one-shot thing. You don't get a chance to build it over and over again, for example, So therefore, in IT, we find that since most IT activities are run as projects, so therefore the governance has to be quite good. Now, before I go any further, I'd like to put something out of your mind in the sense that, is that the right way to phrase it? Put it out of your mind. That do not get the impression that good governance means you're going to put in extra layers of bureaucracy. That's not true, because a lot of governance is making use of existing corporate facilities, corporate structures, corporate people. It's just that you need to be aware of those things. So basically, we talk about stable operations and a situation of flux. Most organizations, in fact, there's hardly any organization now that does not have to make changes to the way it does things, which means that it has to run projects, whether you do it formally or informally. Okay. Now, change is basically, this is a little pyramid we did, which shows the copyrighted logos there. Don't worry about what it is, I'll tell you what they are later, right? It talks about portfolios, programs, and projects. So now we understand that we cannot just talk about projects because the nature of running change initiatives require different kind of mindset. And so business as usual, usually abbreviated as BAU, talks about your daily operations. And even your daily operations, there are some small changes happening all the time, isn't it, right? You try to improve on the way you do things, gradual changes. However, when we have got what we call stepwise changes, that means drastic changes, right? Replacing procedures, for example, right?